This is Pearl Gonzalez, and you're listening to the BBYK podcast.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to another excellent episode of the Bros You Know. I'm your host, Viet Duan, and I'm joined by my good friend and aspiring fight analyst, Matt Two Stripe Alexander. What's up, Matt?
Not much. Getting that Muay Thai practice on my dog.
Yeah, that's what you were telling me a little bit earlier. You've been working on your Muay Thai kicks.
Yeah, you know, he does the Dustin Poirier, tries to get his two hands down. I'm like, that's not grounded. And then bam, throw that low kick.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure after one of these episodes, we're gonna get complaints from PETA.
PETA, CPS, Canine Protective Services.
You're always bragging about how you're throwing low kicks at your dog, or you're putting them in a variety of chokes or submissions.
So yeah, they try to duck down and go, and you're like, oh hell no, boom. You gotta plumb clinch him and throw those knees and take the back. He doesn't bite me a lot either.
So that's fair.
That's fair.
All right, guys. We have a most excellent episode for you guys today. We're gonna talk a little Cyborg, Jermaine Duran from me drama, the viability of the women's featherweight division. Then we're going to briefly go over the UFC Stockholm's main event. Then we're gonna talk about the middleweight money fight mayhem. Then finally, Matt and I will get to discussing two exciting fights at the top of the UFC 212 card down in Rio. Now, Matt, you've been wanting to talk about this, the women's featherweight division. What a mess. What's going to happen here, Matt?
Nothing. It will cease to exist, hopefully.
Which is ridiculous, because one of the most talented female fighters on the planet is in that weight division. That's just the reality right now. We're having trouble building out that division. We're having trouble finding people that are willing to go against Cyborg. Yep.
And I don't know how developed it is in other like regional circuits. It's usually not that developed either, but it seems like it's taken a step backwards. Everyone else is following suit. Like Invicta has a few more weight classes than the UFC, but that's about it. You don't really see like open weight female matchups unless you're in Japan and you watch Gabby Garcia beat up grandmas.
Oh man, yeah. Yeah, I'm with you on this one. I think it's just we have a problem filling out the division. I mean, how many people do you need? You want at least, 15 so you can have a ranking, right? I mean,
yeah.
Do we have 15 high-quality people that we can even put on the roster? You need to go 20, 30, 40 deep to really establish a division. Do we really have that many female fighters right now at 145? I don't know. But I do know that Cyborg she has gotten a good bump in PR.
Oh yeah.
I feel I think you probably want to go into this a bit. She had a little scuffle with Magana. Is that how you say her name?
Yeah, girl that no one knows about and was constantly leaking pictures of herself and trying to be cool. And you're like, wait, who? Because we already forgot who she was. Bye.
She's the Jeremy Stevens.
Who the
fuck is that chick?
She's like, I get the heaviest hands in the division to my face because I don't throw and I don't know how to block and I'm really bad at fighting, which is why I lost on Tough and no one's ever heard of me. Oh.
It's kind of funny. We were just talking with Pearl earlier, but Magana is a name that she floated out there. Not that she was... I want to make it clear she was not calling anybody out, but I was just asking what names would be interesting. So, I mean, that would be a fun fight. But yeah, getting back to Cyborg, she's not always had the best PR, shall we say.
Yeah.
With all of the steroid controversy and the failing the drug tests and all of that stuff, it's a bunch of hits for public image, and then now all of a sudden she gets kind of picked on, stands up for herself a little bit, and everyone is there was the hashtag Team Cyborg.
Yeah, that was awesome.
She's doing well for herself right now. The viability of that division, I just don't know. I I mean, it's a shame. You know, if the UFC wanted to, they would just have to make a concerted effort, try to find the women to fill it out.
Yeah. And obviously there's some, like, I feel like a 125 would make more sense because, you know, there's a lot of 135ers that are cutting too much to get to 115, and then there's 115ers that are really going up to 135 that are giving up a weight advantage. And I feel like those divisions are probably about deep enough where you could split it into another and add a 125, and that would keep things. It might actually increase the competition because more people would be fighting at their natural weight. But for 145, it's hard to find people like that. And then there's also the issue that, like, the UFC doesn't want to, like, market that. They want to market, like, petite, beautiful people that are great. And you're like, well, I don't think they're gonna
That's
like have.
true.
They're not gonna have like the 200-pound girl fights. I'm like, yeah, there's probably like a ton of really talented people there, but
Yeah, that's the reality of it, right? And it should be pointed out that 145 is a hard cut for Cyborg.
yeah,
So as the sport gets bigger and there are more women that are doing it now, we'll get more women that can fill out that weight class. I agree with you. I think 125 makes sense. I think it's weird that you would have like a weight class in the middle of like two weight classes and you don't have that one. And it's like, it would make sense that a lot of people would be able to fight at that weight class. I mean, could you imagine if you just all of a sudden took away middleweight? You're like, all right, you're either a welter or light heavy.
light heavyweight might get interesting again. Yay!
I think as the sport grows, we'll get more talent into it, and hopefully we'll be able to build out that division. But Cyborg's been added that for a while, so hopefully it happens sooner rather than later. Moving on, we're going to just touch base on that UFC Stockholm main event. Gustafsson is back. Looked absolutely dominant against Glover Teixeira. The sad thing about that division right now is Glover lost that fight pretty convincingly, and he's still the third-ranked guy in that division.
Yeah.
So, especially without Jon Jones. Now, Jon Jones is coming back this summer. It looks like he's on track to go against Cormier for the belt. Gus is a talented fighter and would be considered a title contender on his own, but especially in that division where there's just not a lot of talent at the top, he's definitely back up there. I mean, we were talking about Jimmy Manuwa, who nothing against Jimmy Manuwa, but we were talking about Jimmy Manuwa as a title contender.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, who is he beating? And it's like, well, he's beating all those other guys you don't know about. It feels like there's a couple prospects coming up that could be good, like him and Ozdemir, and Ozdemir is, yeah. Ozdemir's fighting the other guy. Serkinov.
He's fighting Manuwa.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I thought he was fighting Serkinov.
Mm-mm.
That's a good one.
It is a good fight, but here's my crazy thing is that this is going to be billed as a number one contender fight, and from the numbers, why wouldn't it be? You have the number 3 guy versus the number 5 guy. But this is my point about like how in flux that division is right now, in that we talk about a year and a half ago, neither of those guys were even top 10.
Yeah.
And it's not like they've been beating like top 5 guys to get to the top 5 themselves, right? So, and then now we're talking about Volkan and Manuwa. They beat each other, and then the next step is they get to beat the winner of Jones-Cormier. That's kind of nuts to me.
Yeah, it feels like that happens a lot. I feel like it happens more in like super competitive divisions. We'll have like a, don't need to sound racist or anything, but a Woodley situation where it's like you can, if you hold off for a while, you just get a good win streak going, even if it's not a great win streak over like some top names. As long as you don't lose and you like bide your time, like the top guys are going to knock each other off in any division.
That's the thing about title shots. It's, you know, you have the fighting portion of it, you got the business portion of it, and then a lot of it's just right place, right time. It's kind of a little bit of chance involved. Obviously, Woodley doing pretty well for himself, and you know, I mean, we're not to say he's I mean, he's gone against a guy that people considered was the top guy in that division, and Thompson twice. He's won twice, so he's done well for himself. But because you look at the lighter divisions, and it's just stacked with talent. You look at the featherweight division, and you go 1 through 10. They're all great matchups, so we'll see. But I am excited about Volkan Manuel. I think that's going to be a good fight. As many of you have heard, they're going to be doing an interim title fight in the middleweight division because...
Why not?
Well, it's because the champion is injured. Wait, that is not true.
The champion is waiting for the other guy he wants to fight, eye injury, to recover, even though he also has an eye injury, and he's just like, oh my god, give me the money before I retire.
Bisping is waiting for GSP. They're both saying the right things in that Bisping is like, that's the fight on the table. That was what was offered to me, so I accepted it, and that's what's going to happen until I hear otherwise. And then for GSP, it's like, oh, I know Bisping doesn't cheat, so that's the guy I want. But it's kind of like, man, that's opportunistic for like both of you guys. I don't think anybody's buying it. But Whitaker Romero, that's a hell of a fight.
Awesome. Yeah.
So I'm really stoked about that one. I don't know if you got this.
Musasi to Bellator.
Did you see Musasi's interview on Fox with Bisping and the Florida?
Oh, it was fire. He's like, the best fighter doesn't always win. I mean, look at you.
Look Rockhold. I was like, kill shot. You know, it's kind of funny. I find myself, and it's really weird with him, I find myself oftentimes agreeing with what he's saying. He just says it in a way where you want to disagree with him. It's like, even when he's saying like nice things, he comes off as like whiny or something. I'm not sure what it is. But it was kind of fun to see him sort of acknowledge that. He's like, isn't that my character? I'm the guy that complains or whatever. Definitely not taking the Bisping approach. He wants Rockhold. He wants top level guys. He wants to get paid more. And come on, there's really no. If you're going to use Sage Northcutt, it's really hard to argue with that. And you look at Musasi's resume and you look at Northcutt's resume and you're like, well, who should get paid more? So not to take anything away from Northcutt, that dude rocks the blonde spikes quite well.
Awesome.
Get excited. Let's get right into it. UFC 212. We got a pair of really excellent fights at the top of the card. Got maybe not some of the most known guys. It's going to be a Brazil heavy card, of course, being in Rio. We have the Phenom, Vitor Belfort's final fight against Nate Marquardt. Nate is kind of up there in age too, so I wonder if it's going to be like a co-retirement.
Double KO.
Double KO. Do you have any thoughts on that fight? Do you think that Belfort gets to go out on top? He's just. It seems like all that's been happening lately is he's been losing, but not just like losing. He's been losing in devastating fashion.
Yeah.
Like he's getting knocked out, or he's getting like TKO'd, but like brutally ground and pounded. Like, this guy has taken a lot of punishment his last few fights to the point where you were kind of wondering if he would just like call it quits, like not have another fight. Wanted to have another fight. We were talking about it before we started recording, and Nate, it's a major step down from the competition he was going against. Especially if we're still saying Vitor, I think in the rankings he's still a top 10 guy. So
that's crazy.
This is. It does kind of seem like the UFC's trying to feed him an easier opponent. Not that Nate's not just going to give it to him. He's got a lot of pride, veteran. But man, we were talking how it would be really sad if he lost his final fight in front of the home crowd.
Yeah, that would be pretty sad. What can you say? Estrogen dump is a hell of a drug, but he's also had a very long career and has recently lost to a couple, decent or not great guys. He lost to Gastelum, but he lost to Sam Alvey and Thiago Santos recently. It's not like those guys are like middle of the road for their weight class. So I feel like I want Vitor to go out on like a storybook, wheel kick to the head in the first round, but I get the feeling that it's just going to be two tired guys swinging at each other and leaning on each other for 3 rounds, and then Vitor wins by split decision.
It sucks to see guys go out on a loss, man. We had to see that twice, like a few cards back when Anthony Johnson and Patrick Cote, they both retired on a loss. It's kind of tough. Anthony Johnson thing kind of came out of nowhere, so it was like you didn't even know how to feel about it. You're just kind of like, what? But Patrick Cote, that was kind of brutal because he's been one of the good guys of the sport. So you would have liked to see him go out on a win. Whatever. This is sometimes it's not meant to be.
It's an unforgiving sport.
That's true. All right, let's get to our. So this isn't a co-main event. The Claudia Gadelha fight versus Karolina Kowalkiewicz is a 3-rounder. The main event is the Aldo Holloway fight, but I think you can treat Claudia Karolina as a co-main event. It is a true 1 versus 2, a number 1 contender fight. They both have something in common. They're both coming off losses to Joanna Champion.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on this fight? You got Claudia, who's going back down to Brazil. I don't know if it's going to be awkward or not. She used to train with Aldo and those guys at Nova União, but lately she's been in Albuquerque, training with Luttrell. So got that altitude training.
Sweet.
And then of course you got Karolina, who's a Gracie Barra, Poland. I know you're a big Gracie Barra fan.
That's my girl.
Where do you think, for a fighter like Karolina, who's Muay Thai striker, kickboxer, and then you have Claudia Gadelha, who's going to be a little bit more of a grappler, wrestler. I think the oversimplified breakdown would be the striker will have most success on the outside, but I don't think that's going to be the case in this fight. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think there's going to be. It comes down to really Karolina's clinch game and her takedown defense. She's a bit. Because she's very similar skill set to Joanna Champion. And Gadelha was probably her biggest challenge so far due to her wrestling. But in the later rounds, she seemed to fade a little bit, and Joanna took over. This being a 3-round fight, I think is going to factor into that. I don't think Gadelha is going to gas out or anything, or tire from her top control. And I think KK, she hits harder than Joanna, but obviously nobody has the volume. So I see Gadelha probably taking her down and controlling her a lot, and possibly submitting her, but thinking win by decision.
I think the 3-round format definitely favors Gadelha in this fight. That's one of the big question marks on her. She's a fast starter. It's kind of they're both a little bit opposite. Like that, Karolina is a little bit more of a slow starter. It takes a while to kind of warm up, feel out her opponent. I don't know how I feel about Karolina in general. I like her. She seems like such a sweetheart, and she does have a unique skill set. You said that similar skill set to Joanna. She's got kickboxing skills. She's not nearly the level of striker that Joanna is. I think it's highly debatable if she has the same power as the champion. And I think she's just kind of worse everywhere else. I don't know if I necessarily ever bought her as a contender. I think she's gritty. She had some skills that brought her some success against some lower level opponents. She did look fantastic not fantastic, but she had a couple really solid rounds against Rose Namajunas, who inexplicably just stayed in the clinch with her and didn't really go away from it, even though Karolina was winning those exchanges. I do think if Karolina is going to have some success here, it will be in the clinch. She's really good at getting the short shots, elbows, and mixing it up. I think it would be a bad idea if she just tried to play a more inside-outside game, try to stay from distance, because when Claudia kind of like moves forward, she's able to set up her shots, and she's a bit of a swarmer, and her striking, it's fairly technical for someone that kind of throws like that. And she's not gonna. I don't think she's gonna beat Carolina in terms of volume, but I think she will be a bit more precise in those exchanges, and the edge when it comes to power. And that's only going to be set in enough. Like, she doesn't have to win the striking exchanges necessarily, even though she very well can. And the thing that's going to make it hard for Carolina to really have success, especially in the clinch, is the constant threat of the takedown by Claudia. Because I think once it gets to the ground, I think the difference between those two it's quite a bit once it gets to the ground. And I would not, like you said, I would not be surprised if it did go to the ground, if Claudia was able to finish it with a submission. But it's tough to beat a girl like Carolina. She's one of those fighters. She's pretty solid everywhere. She says she's been working on her wrestling. It's not like we've seen a lot of evidence of that in her last few fights because the fight just hasn't gone there. So we haven't really seen that tested. She hasn't gone against a high caliber grappler like a Claudia Gadelha. So this would be a good test for her. And maybe she kind of proves me wrong and she's a much better there. She's able to kind of fend off a lot of takedowns and is able to make Claudia pay for it. We do know that the first few times Claudia goes in there and goes for a takedown when she's fresh, she's dangerous.
Yeah.
So dangerous. Everything is on the table.
Goes right through him.
Yeah, everything is on the table for her. She can still do everything, but as the fight goes on, she gets a little bit retired. She kind of cuts out a little bit from her playbook and sticks to what she can still excel at. It would really be those later rounds that Carolina would have the ability to have some success. I see Claudia jumping out on it early, winning rounds 1, maybe trying to do the same stuff. If Carolina figures it out, maybe she might figure out it by rounds 3, and I think that would be best case scenario. She wins 1 out of 2, but I see it.
Yeah,
I see it going to decision. Carolina's tough to finish. I kind of feel like it sounded like I'm trashing on her a bit, and it's not really that. She's a very skilled mixed martial artist. I just don't know. I don't know if I buy her as a number 1, number 2 person in that division, is all I'm saying. And now that I say that, she's gonna go in there and just smoke Claudia. But the thing is, I do see Claudia as one of the top people in that division, though. So in my mind, this is Claudia's fight.
I concur.
Let's just get it out there. There is going to be a big shadow cast over the main event. Shadow the size of Conor McGregor. That's going to be the thing that everyone's in the back of everyone's head. All right, sure, this is for the featherweight title, but both these guys have lost to Conor McGregor. I think it will feel a little bit more legitimate if Holloway wins, just because he at least went the distance with McGregor.
Then won a bunch.
And since Conor McGregor, he's beaten the who's who of the division, and it's just looked phenomenal. Whereas Aldo, and he had 1 fight since Conor, but he looked fantastic in it. So we'll get into that in a bit. They're both on an upward trajectory in terms of their career. Aldo probably more on his way out. Holloway, it just seems like he's destined to be the champion at some point. We've talked about that for a while. Is it going to be this fight? It could be.
Every time we say that about somebody, and we're like, well, sometime they're going to be champion, but probably not now. Then they end up winning. So
then they end up winning. So and then sometimes we we project, or we put too much stock on potential and growth, and the savvy veteran shows you why they're so good, like Frankie Edgar showed in that.
I didn't lose faith in you, Frankie. I knew you were going to whoop his ass.
Yeah, against Yair. I thought that was going to be Yair's coming out party. Frankie said no. And that's the thing That's why MMA is it's an awesome sport. Anything can happen. So let's just get right into it. When you have Holloway, I mean, guy's 5'11" versus Aldo 5'7". Aldo will have the reach advantage. Reach to me has always been kind of a weird measurement anyways, in that it's like your entire wingspan, which doesn't seem to be the best way to measure anything when it comes to fighting, because you don't fight with like your entire back.
Yeah.
You could have you have a guy with like a wide back, like a Brock Lesnar or something like
short
that.
Arms.
He's got like but he has like super short arms.
T-Rex arms.
Yeah, versus a guy like a George St. Pierre who legitimately has really long arms relative to his height. So I think the reach advantage going to really be an advantage. Holloway is a very rangy fighter, and I want to say, like, Ferguson, he does a good job of making himself long, with the caveat that he doesn't necessarily need that to find success. Like, he's willing to mix it up inside in a way that a guy like Ferguson, he likes to kind of play his outside, his out boxer game a little bit. And Holloway's, you know, he's got a little bit more of a swarmer's mentality. He mixes up stuff so well. So let's get into it. What are your initial thoughts here on the fight? What are going to be some of the things that Holloway has going for him against Aldo?
He's tall. He swarms. He has a heart the size of Hawaii, or probably larger. And he's very good at switching things up, both in stance and strikes. And he just finds a way to, like, he throws these looping punches, and it looks like chaos in there. But you look at when he stands in the pocket with somebody, he knows how to make other people miss and how to throw punches at angles where it's going to land. He knows how to hit and not get hit, even though it might not look like super crisp. I give him really good chances here. Some people are saying that Aldo is going to beat him, like, on everywhere.
I do not buy that at all.
I don't buy that at all. I do think he's going to get leg kicked a lot, but the fact that he switches stances so much and, is pretty rangy of a fighter is gonna help him there. And I think Aldo is going to has to dart in and out in order to hit him when he's not throwing leg kicks. And I think Holloway's going to clip him a couple times on his way out. We might see Aldo employ some, like, takedowns and some ground game, because there's a little he kind of would have an advantage there, but that's not really something that you see a lot from Aldo. I had to go look at his stats. He's only had 2 submission victories, and one of them was, like, a submission to strikes. He basically just keeps it standing, and, he's got such sick takedown defense. Plus, I don't think Max is going to try to take him down, so if anybody...
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, so if anybody brings it down, it'll be Aldo, and possibly as a reaction to try to control things and slow Max down and try to, like, steal some rounds, like if Max starts winning in the exchanges. But
especially if he, like, gets Aldo into the clinch and starts working him with short shots, I could see Aldo trying to take it to the ground, beat him up a little bit. Holloway is he's such an awesome fighter, and he's a BBYK favorite here. The guy, the word versatility to describe this game. He does well in basically any situation that you could put him in. His risk management is excellent. He's one of those guys where you see him and it looks like he puts himself in dangerous positions, but he never puts himself in more danger than the position he's put his opponent in. So he's willing to take some risk, but only if you're willing to take greater risk to capitalize on it, if that makes sense. And he's a swarmer. I find that he's become increasingly more technical with his strikes, not on the same level as Aldo, but different, where he can throw almost any punch in the game, any strike in the game, fairly well, versus Aldo, who's really going to stick with your meat and potatoes, your more basic strikes, more basic combinations, but he does them at an elite level. I think the key to me in this fight is going to be who can dictate pace. Holloway has some of the highest output of any fighter on the roster. And the guy is go, and he can go for 5 rounds. He has that kind of gas tank. That's one of his strengths. I think it overwhelms his opponents a little bit, because it's kind of like you're training, and you're like, all right, I weathered the storm. Now I get to go in and do my stuff. And it's like, oh man, he's still going. He doesn't let up. And you look at that Ricardo Lamas fight, that was such a signature win for Holloway. He got in trouble. he was able to weather the storm. And he was able to just work his offense so well, mixing it up, head, body, head. He's a swarmer, but he keeps his opponent guessing because he's such a creative striker. Going against Aldo, who we saw in that last fight, and we're going to talk about this in a little bit, he looked really impressive against Frankie. Against Frankie, though, he fought more as like an outboxer, stuck with his boxing game. And I think that was to compensate for the fact that Frankie is such a high-level grappler.
Yeah. Didn't throw a leg kick till like round 3, they said.
I think that's not going to be the case here with Holloway. And if you look back in that Anthony Pettis fight, it's kind of weird because in my mind that Anthony Pettis fight, it's like Holloway smoked Pettis. The way that fight ended, it looked like he smoked him. But that fight was fairly close in the first few rounds. And some of the success that Pettis was able to have was the leg kick. You go back a few fights earlier against, Mr. Who the Fook is that guy, Jeremy Stevens. And Stevens had a lot of success early on, too, against Holloway, throwing those leg kicks. The thing that Holloway did to mitigate that later on when he won't check him. He doesn't do a good. He kind of goes to like the Diaz school of we don't check leg kicks, only the weak check leg kicks. So he doesn't necessarily do that. How he reacted to it later on was he just when they went in for the leg kicks, he just timed it and he took them down. And in both cases, he was able to maintain top control and against Stevens, really ground and pound him for a bit before Stevens was able to get back up. Same thing with Pettis. Do you think that that's going to be something that Holloway would do here if Aldo finds some success with the leg kicks? Because we know you want to talk about like that's one of the things that Aldo can do against Holloway as a game plan. This is also one of Aldo's like signature moves. His leg kicks are legendary.
Yeah. I think it's definitely going to be one of the main tools that Aldo uses to dictate the pace. But the other thing is, Holloway's so good at moving forward and throwing simultaneously that Aldo, a lot of times it's when guys they're entering from the outside and they're looking at each other kind of like judging the distance is when he throws a jab and then will add a leg kick to it. It's kind of like adding these like little point fighting, but also, cutting the base down. I feel like Holloway is going to have so much pressure that Aldo is going to be having to use more defensive footwork, and he's not going to have as many opportunities to throw leg kicks. And then by the time it hits the 4th and 5th rounds, I'm not sure who's going to be more tired because Holloway has great cardio and he's always pushing forward. So it really depends on how much those leg kicks take him out by the championship rounds, like what it takes out of him. Because first looking at it, I was like, oh yeah, Aldo's gonna leg kick him to death. But then like looking at the way that Max moves forward and how the fight might play out, I think it's going to be a big deal, but I don't think it's going to be as big of a deal as I thought it was.
But my question to you is, do you see Holloway the way what I was saying was the way he responded to leg kicks in his previous fights was to go for a takedown? Do you see him going with that strategy against Aldo?
I see him possibly getting up close in like a clinch or like try to force him up against the cage, but you got to think that with somebody as good as Aldo and his takedown defense, that's just not going to be an option. And also, Aldo's gotten a little bit slimmer, I guess, so it depends on muscle mass, like when they get in the cage, how it's going to be. I feel like Holloway could use that to his advantage to just grind him up against the cage a little bit, because I don't think he's going to be able to take him down.
The clinch game will be very interesting, and see who can really impose their will. Both fighters very, very good in the clinch. I think it just comes down to who can dictate the pace of the fight. I mean, even on Aldo's like highest output fight, it's still not at the caliber of Holloway's like lowest output fight. I mean, we're just talking about a severe difference in just total volume, and that's the way they fight. That's the way Aldo fights. That's the way Holloway fights, and they're also really good at dictating that on their opponents, making their opponents fight their style. And you see Aldo, even when he fights guys that tend to have higher output, he's able to kind of lull them into his pace, slow it down, allow him to be more of that outboxer that we saw against Frankie, kind of be a counter striker. He throws. I think I would say Aldo might. I think Aldo will have the power advantage. I don't think he will hit Holloway as much. I think it's going to be a battle of Holloway will hit him more, but with less on them. But when Aldo hits Holloway, he's going to have a little bit more oomph to it.
Yeah.
And especially when you're going against a swarmer like Holloway, who, like I was talking about earlier, who's so good at mixing things up. It's like when you see him, he's like one of those like fight games where like the combo multiplier on the screen is like going crazy, and he mixes it up. He'll just like go basic with you early on, like your 1-2s, and he goes your 1-3-7s. He works that shovel hook into your body. Like he's just really, really good at mixing up, and he's creative. He's on the fly. He'll throw different combinations at you, so you don't really know where to go. Against a fighter like that, one of the best ways to slow their momentum is with well set up counter shots, really strong counter shots. If you have the power behind them, that kind of stops them a little bit, stifles their momentum, and they kind of think twice before they do that again. I don't know, I don't know if Aldo has the power to make Holloway do that. Holloway just seems like he's on a different level when it comes to determination. This kid, he's a joy to watch. He's also a little frightening. I know we were watching that fight. I bring up that Lamas fight again because that was such an awesome fight to watch. And,
oh my God, yeah.
And you know, at the end when they were both just kind of swinging wildly, but it was different. They were both swinging wildly, and kudos to Lamas for going out like that. But it was like Lamas was doing it. It was kind of like a little bit out of pride, and then a little bit like survival. Like this is like the only chance I got to score something big here. But Holloway, who was winning the fight, engaging in that, and not just engaging in it, but like winning it and going hard. It was like he wanted so badly. It's like the difference between a guy like fighting not to lose and a guy that is fighting to be the very best. His determination is just on a different level. So, man, it's a collision of two really powerful forces. You got Aldo, who's been the kingpin of that division for so long. It's like with the fans, there's always going to be that asterisk, that Conor McGregor asterisk there, but you can't deny, before that Conor fight, Aldo's resume is incredible. It puts him up there with some of the best that have ever done it. And then his accolades that outside of the octagon. It's 4-time jiu-jitsu world champion. Like this guy is a true martial artist. He's really skilled up. That said, he's had a ton of fights. We're going to start seeing him slow down eventually. And I don't know how much longer he has in the sport. It's the opposite for Holloway. This kid, he's going to be around for a while. He's only 25. To decision time, Matt, who do you see winning this fight?
Aldo by controversial decision. In Brazil.
In Brazil. I love it. There's a lot to like with what Aldo can do here. I'm going to pick Holloway. Aldo has the tools to beat a fighter like Holloway. I think the X factor is just Holloway's sort of that Hawaiian craziness in him or whatever. He's just that berserker mode or whatever that he can elevate to once he gets into the cage. He's just so freaking determined. And you fight a guy like a Swarmer, like I said, a good counter puncher, especially one with the power advantage, should be able to stymie it a little bit. But I think Holloway's so mentally tough. I don't see Aldo stopping Holloway from doing this game. I don't see Aldo being able to finish Holloway. I mean, I don't see Holloway being able to finish Aldo either. I think that this is going to go to decision. It has the makings to be an excellent fight.
Yeah.
I just think that Aldo is not going to be able to deter Holloway from his game. And if you're saying you got a guy who's high volume, high output, accurate strikes versus a guy who's going to be more picking his shots a little bit more strategically, more of a technical striker, has a little bit more power, how is that going to play to the judges' volume versus the technical strikes? I just think by the end of the fight, it'll just look like Holloway has done so much more, especially since he's the kind of guy that seems to get amped up, one of those stronger as the fight goes type of fighters. And Aldo, not that he fades, but he does slow a bit. I think, especially in the later rounds, that output difference is just going to be a lot more evident. And because of that, I think that the judges will go with Holloway on this one. But hey, we're in Brazil though, so we we don't know.
He's normal.
Well, yeah, that was our UFC 212 breakdown. Matt, you got anything else you want to tell our listeners?
Oh, The Ultimate Fighter is still a thing, guys. Apparently. I don't know, I don't watch it, but apparently it's still going on.
Yeah, I haven't watched it this season, but it should be pretty good just for the drama between TJ Dillashaw and Cody Garbrandt, right?
Oh, yeah. And speaking of which, there's other social media. So we had the Magana drama with Cyborg. There's some, douchey bodybuilder who was, an amateur fighter a long time ago who's now a bodybuilder. And he's like, oh, yeah, I'm going to fight Cody. And we're like, okay, keyboard warrior. And he's like, I'll buy you a plane ticket. Here's the address. And we haven't heard from him. It's like, as Michael Bisping and other British people say, chat shit, get banged.
I would have taken him up for it. I mean, get a free plane ticket, go out to Cali, go hang out with the guys at Team Alpha Male, risk death, because Cody would probably kill me. Yeah. No. Maybe it's not right. Maybe it's not worth it. Bodybuilder, that was a wise decision. All right, and to all you fight fans out there, we'd love to hear from you. So write to us in the comments section below, or you can tweet at us at BrosBros. You can tweet at me at FaceToFacts22, and you can tweet at Matt at BrobazGuy. Also, we have a new interview on the site with UFC women's strawweight Pearl Gonzalez. It was a lot of fun. She is super awesome. You'll want to check that out. For the latest and greatest in all things BBYK, why don't you go on and hit that subscribe button? And summer is coming, so you're going to want to hit that gym twice as hard, but here's a little bro tip: don't skip leg day. And until next time, we are the Bros, you know.